This is a case study of guided discovery learning for children in nature. It's called the Hummingbird approach. My name is Jamie Black. I'm the founder of Wildcraft Play School. It's an honor and privilege to be standing here on the Comox First Nation territory. I just want to acknowledge that I have the privilege to be doing this work in this good way on this unceded territory. So I'm going to share my thesis with you. I defended in 2017, just to give you a taste of some of the background of Wildcraft Play, where it came from, and what I barely uncovered over the span of 5 years. Oops. It's a mastery and a mystery, this world of the hummingbird approach. I give gratitude to all of the humans and the non-human beings who have helped me on my journey. This is all about child engagement in a nature-based program. When you look at this diagram, you see an interweaving, always connective spiral that integrates many identities, many forms, and it's continual. So I just want to open your mind to the idea that any concept or process or training that you receive here at Wildcraft Play, that you can interweave them and they come and go like a hummingbird. There's a beginning, a middle, and end, but they always reoccur. The beginnings and the middles and the ends, they keep reoccurring. This is an element of child engagement where there's a connection between child responses and the facilitated approach. Children need free time in nature. And for me, in a world of adventure, travel, guiding, climbing, sailing, kayaking, canoeing, rock rappelling, caving, all of the things that I have done in my life that have brought me to where I am today has keenly focused me on how do we generate that aspect of adventure and play just through our imagination. If a child is to keep alive their inborn sense of wonder, he needs the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with them the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. The core research questions are: what facilitation techniques were most effective in positively engaging children in nature-based programming? And once these techniques or principles were identified, what could be the potential for replication and training of other environmental educators and facilitators? In the literature, there are many researchers that have noted that connection with nature is critical for the overall well-being of not only the child, but how they treat the environment. A facilitation technique that works is what some people call learn by doing by John Dewey back in the early 1900s, which then became guided discovery learning, coined by Jerome Bruner in 1961. He says, discovery, like surprise, favors the well-prepared mind. So this is a case study, and I just want you to take a look at these videos. When I found out from my professor that I was allowed to study myself as a character with children playing in nature, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. My dream was coming true, that I could actually study what I had created. I did what's called video ethnography. So I had a videographer holding a video camera right over my shoulder most of the time and capturing all of the conversations between them and myself. It was at Salt Springs Center School. The research flow looked like this. The presentation was made to teachers and students and the administrator of the school. And the research would include that videography and observation notes, as well as a couple of other aspects that weren't included in the final presentation. And it was for 2 hours a day for 7 weeks, which collected 14 hours of footage. I facilitated wildcraft play and the children played. The presentations and publications and promotions were communicated to all parties involved. So as we collected the information over the span of time, there was a progression of the day that definitely became important to identify, which comes from Coyote's Guide, if you have it, Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature, created by the 8 Shields organization with John Young and other folks. And it was fascinating that my intention was to integrate that into my research, and yet I hadn't found enough academic study that proved that this progression of the day taught by John Young and folks at the 8 Shields organization. So it was a real honor to be able to include that in my research, because it was a big influence on what I did. And I could have focused on anything. Once I had all this data, I thought, gosh, what was I going to do? What I realized is that I needed to pick an issue. I needed to find out what was the biggest problem, and is a problem that this research could either, like hypothesize towards. And so something fascinating happened. I focused on laying all of my material out, and I found that as much as I tried to follow the 8 Shields practice of opening, creating inspiration, activating, focus, taking a break, and then gathering and sharing and reflecting, I found that I often forgot to take a break, and I spent way more time in the realm of focus. So my theme for that particular the wildcraft play game that we played was about consumerism, and it usually is in the programming that I do. And what I found was on day 4, it didn't quite turn out as I had planned. So during the data collection phase, I followed the lesson plans. I played the role of a storyteller. I put the researcher hat on. And when I put that researcher hat on, after the session was over, I got some very specific feedback from the children. It was adorable. So on day 4, with my researcher's agenda, I ended up meeting all the kids under this big, beautiful tree. And instead of playing the game like what they were expecting, I put my researcher's hat on, and the children had started talking about consumerism on day 3. And it tickled me that we had already met my objective only in 3 days. And I wanted to find out why. Well, what that did is I ended up, the progression of the day was very different and was mainly focused for the whole beginning of this experience. And if you watch my little boredom barometer over here on the right, you can see how it changed his experience and most other experience. I became more didactic in my approach. And as he models, the children seemed bored. And when I found out at the end of the day, the students said if the study was going to continue in that way, the children were going to quit. For me to be able to look back on that experience and laugh at myself and tear this apart was, it was humbling and silly and so great for me to have captured on footage. So the children responses sort of compared or was basically alongside the facilitated approach as well. So on the side of the child responses, we had if they were engaged or not engaged. And with the facilitated approach, the themes and components that I integrated were about positive presence, facilitative approach, the props, and nature connection. And I created this flow chart of data and information using a couple of different methods. And what I found is that I had to shift the 8 shields approach to be able to evaluate more from a place of engagement. How engaged are they? I was able to qualitatively assess whether or not they were engaged based on a few different components. So I called it indicators of engagement. The apathy, boredom, agitated, or distracted responses seemed pretty clear. If they were present and listening, seemed pretty easy to evaluate, as well as the curiosity and commenting, which relates to the time when they were being inspired. And then the activated and motivated response, while they were in the southeasty kind of time of activation. And if they were passionately focused and participating, was during the focus time. Now, when it was time to take a break, did they actually freely play? And then when it's time to gather and share and then reflect and integrate, were they present and were they sharing? Were they following through? I really was able to identify in this experience when they were not engaged and when they were engaged. So in that facilitated approach, the positive presence included positive tone, enthusiasm, encouraging words, and patience. In the facilitative approach, it included focused listening, reflective questioning, providing information or facts, and dramatic storytelling. And then there were props and the nature connection. So the plan progression of day 4 was based on Coyote's Guide to Connecting to Nature. And this is how this flow chart goes. So if we start up in the northeast section of the circle, that's the start of the day. And what you'll see and what my plan was for day 4, on the left-hand side, what my plan was for it to look like that. But what it ended up looking like is what you see on the right-hand side, where way more of the very beginning of the experience was all about focus. I didn't even take a break. There was no time for a break. And there was a whole lot more focusing at the end of it, which was the day they said, if it continues like this, we are going to quit the research. So the progression of the day seemed to go like this on day 3. So I had a whole lot more focus than I had expected, but I kind of figured things out by day 5. See how it's a little bit more time spent inspiring them and then working on the skills of activating and then diving into the focus. And then the one thing again that I was missing is I forgot to let them take a break. Interesting. Very interesting. So I want to share this video with you so you can hear what it was about. Oops. Go back. Oh, it's not going to let me show you this video. One moment. I think it's overwhelmed here. Oh, you can't hear it, but you can kind of see that in the moment, what I'm doing is I'm saying, so when you guys brought up that you had a worry about consumerism, what did that mean to you? And so just watch their body language. The boy who just raised his hand was the one who initially brought up the concern about consumerism. And look at how quickly how boring it became. This is my teacher hat coming in, the researcher teacher showing up, me doing most of the talking and describing and explaining and telling. Finally, one boy dives in to try to track some information. And the one boy who's curious about consumerism is doing most of the talking. It was a very interesting time. I'm gonna pause it there and just share that, yeah, what I learned isn't anything new. I value that it's not anything new, but having put so much time and effort into the study of engagement helped me understand that I have a whole lot more than I need to understand to allow the children to discover the bubbles for themselves. So with this hummingbird approach, I talk about preparing the space. I talk about creating a storyline, role play, and making quests, and then let go and connect with nature. I came up with this diagram, and this diagram is a model that again shows that it's a continuum. It's not a beginning, middle, and end. It begins and it ends, and it begins and ends, and it comes back and forth and flows from one to the next and back again. So through the progression of a day, it could be a moment that has a beginning and an end. And it could be the day that has a beginning, middle, and an end. And then it has, you know, the entire 7 weeks had a whole progression. And that has to do with the 8 Shields model, which I really honor and respect and appreciate. And I add the hummingbird approach on top of what I learned about the 8 Shields in this progression of the day with this facilitative approach that is like a hummingbird. Our goal for children shouldn't be a risk-free childhood, but a resilient life. That's Richard Louv. So thank you so much for learning a little bit about this case study. If you want to learn more, I'm happy to provide a link for you to access it. Feel free to reach out to me personally. My name is Jamie Black. I'm the founder of Wildcraft Play School. You can email me at Jamie, Jamie, at wildcraftplay.com. Enjoy your day and enjoy the weather. I'm sure it's either wonderful or not, but either way, it's the nature.